The quiet streets of Oakwood Crest were built for peace. The kind of place where the loudest sound on a Sunday afternoon was a lawnmower or a dog barking somewhere down the block. People moved here to disappear into a life that felt predictable, safe. But safety is often just a feeling, a thin layer of paint over something much more fragile. When Julianna Vance was found dead in her home, that illusion collapsed. And what made the case unsettling wasn't just the crime itself. It was how quickly it was declared solved. Within 48 hours, a suspect was arrested, a motive was announced, and the neighborhood was told they could stop worrying. But the story only worked if certain details were ignored. The person who committed the murder was never considered a suspect. They were standing in plain sight, talking to neighbors, helping police. This is the story of a murder solved too quickly, and the quiet blind spots no one noticed until it was too late. Julianna Vance was 34 years old, and to her neighbors, she was a ghost of a person. Not in a scary way, but in a way that felt permanent and steady. She worked as a researcher for a historical society. Her job was to look at old papers, verify dates, and ensure that the past was recorded correctly. This reflected her personality perfectly. Julianna liked things to be correct. She liked her garden to be tidy. She liked her bills to be paid 3 days early. She was not a woman of secrets. She didn't have a hidden life or a group of dangerous friends. Her life was a series of gentle habits. She lived in a small bungalow that she had painted a soft, creamy white. In the mornings, she would sit on her back porch with a cup of coffee and watch the birds. Her neighbors knew her as the woman who would always wave back, but she rarely started the conversation. She was a pillar of the community's background. If you needed to know when the trash was being picked up or if a local meeting was rescheduled, Julianna knew. She remembered birthdays and always sent a card. She was the kind of person you could trust with your house keys, though she never asked for yours. Because she was so consistent, her absence was noticed immediately. Julianna was a person who filled her space in the world with such order that even a small change felt like a warning sign. Her last known moments were recorded by the eyes of the neighborhood and the digital traces we all leave behind. It was a Sunday evening, October 12th. The weather was cooling down, and the sun was setting earlier. At 6:30 p.m., her neighbor, a retired man named Mr. Henderson, saw her at her mailbox. He was out walking his dog, a slow-moving golden retriever. He noted that Julianna looked normal. She was wearing a light sweater and holding a stack of envelopes. She gave him a small, polite wave and went back inside. At 7:12 p.m., Julianna's phone recorded a call. It was her sister, Sarah. They spoke for exactly 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
I know, I feel better
Sarah
now.
would later tell investigators that Julianna sounded completely fine. They talked about what they were going to cook for an upcoming family dinner. Julianna mentioned that she had just put the kettle on and was planning to spend the rest of the evening reading a new biography she had picked up. There was no fear in her voice. There was no mention of a guest or a strange noise at the door. At 8 p.m., the lights in the front of her house went out, and the glow of a reading lamp appeared in the window of her study. To anyone watching, it was just another quiet Sunday night for Julianna Vance. When Monday morning arrived, the routine broke. Julianna didn't leave for work at 8:15 a.m. Her car stayed in the driveway. Her curtains remained closed. By noon, her sister Sarah began to feel a knot of worry in her stomach. Julianna always answered texts within an hour. By 2 p.m., after several unanswered calls, Sarah drove to the house. When she saw the morning newspaper still sitting on the porch, she called the police. The initial police response was standard. 2 officers arrived for a welfare check. They knocked, they called out her name, and eventually, they entered through the back door, which was unlocked. Inside, the house was perfectly still. There was no sign of a struggle. No furniture was knocked over. No glass was broken. It looked like a house waiting for its owner to come back from the other room. They found Julianna in her study. She was sitting in her favorite armchair. A book was open on her lap, and a ceramic mug of tea sat on the side table. The tea had long since gone cold, a dark film forming on the surface. Julianna was gone. The investigators arrived shortly after. They were puzzled by the lack of violence. There were no signs of a break-in. The front door was locked, and the back door had been closed but not bolted. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. It was a quiet, clinical way to die. It suggested that Julianna either didn't see it coming, or she was so comfortable with the person in the room that she never felt the need to fight back until it was too late. This lack of a struggle pointed the police in a very specific direction. They began looking for someone Julianna knew. The reaction from the community was one of deep, shivering fear. In a place like Oakwood Crest, people don't die like this. The neighbors gathered on the sidewalks, whispering to one another. They watched the yellow crime scene tape flutter in the wind. Julianna's family was in a state of shock. They couldn't understand who would want to hurt a woman who lived such a harmless life. In their grief, they tried to help. They tried to think of anyone who might have had a problem with her. This is when the name Marcus Thorne first came up. Marcus Thorne was a man who worked with Julianna at the Historical Society. He was a researcher like her, but he didn't share her calm nature. Marcus was known for being loud, argumentative, and sometimes difficult to work with. A few months before Julianna's death, Marcus had been fired. He blamed Julianna for this, believing she had complained about his work performance to their boss. After he was let go, he sent several angry emails. They weren't death threats, but they were full of resentment and bitterness. To the police, Marcus looked like the perfect suspect. He had a motive, he had a temper, and he had a history with the victim. The investigators began to look for clues that connected Marcus to the crime. They found them surprisingly quickly. They checked digital footprints and found that Marcus's phone had pinged a cell tower near Oakwood on that Sunday evening. Then, they found a security camera from a nearby gas station that showed his car driving toward the neighborhood at 7:45 p.m. But the biggest piece of evidence was a single footprint found in the flower bed just outside Julianna's back door. The ground was soft from a light rain earlier that week. The tread of the footprint matched a specific brand of work boot that Marcus Thorne was known to wear. With this evidence, the police felt they had enough. Within 48 hours of finding Julianna, Marcus Thorne was arrested. The news reported it as a major victory. The disgruntled co-worker narrative was easy for the public to understand. It made sense. It was a story people had heard before. Marcus was disheveled. He was angry during his interrogation, and he couldn't give a clear answer about where he was during the hour of the murder. He admitted he was in the area. He said he wanted to talk to Julianna to ask for his job back, but he claimed he got nervous and just drove around before going home. To the detectives, this sounded like a lie. They stopped looking for other suspects. They had their man. But if you look closer at the behavior of the people involved, the contradictions start to appear. Marcus Thorne was a man who expressed his anger loudly. He sent emails. He argued in public. Men like Marcus usually don't commit quiet crimes. They don't walk into a house and leave it looking undisturbed. They break things. They make noise. Marcus was a loud person, but this was a silent crime. As the legal process began, a young investigator started to look at the safe forensics of the house again. Julianna had a home security system. It was an older model, but it worked. On the night she died, the system had been turned off at 7:25 p.m. It wasn't hacked. It wasn't bypassed. It was turned off using the master code. The police had assumed Julianna turned it off herself to let Marcus in. But why would she give the code to a man she was afraid of? Or why would she let him in at all? The breakthrough didn't come from Marcus Thorne's emails. It came from looking at the people who were considered safe. The real culprit wasn't someone who lived outside the neighborhood. It was someone who lived right in the middle of it. Mr. Henderson, the neighbor who had seen Julianna at the mailbox, had been very helpful to the police. He was the one who told them about Marcus Thorne's car. He was the one who talked about how nervous Julianna seemed lately. He shaped the narrative from the very first hour. Mr. Henderson wasn't a disgruntled co-worker. He was a man obsessed with the order of the neighborhood. He had lived in Oakwood Crest for 30 years. He saw himself as the unofficial watcher of the street. Over time, his interest in Julianna had turned into something dark. He didn't want to date her. He wanted to control her environment. He liked that she was predictable. He liked that she was always there. A few weeks before she died, Julianna had told Mr. Henderson that she was thinking of moving. She had been offered a better job in a different city. To Henderson, this was an insult. It was a disruption of his world. If Julianna moved, his perfect view would be ruined. He began to plan a way to stop her. Because he was a trusted neighbor, Julianna had given him her security code months ago, just in case of an emergency. He was the safe person. The reconstructed timeline tells a much different story than the one the police first believed. At 7:20 p.m., after her sister's call, Julianna heard a soft knock at the back door. It was Mr. Henderson. He had a small basket of vegetables from his garden. She smiled and let him in. She went to the kitchen to get him a glass of water. While her back was turned, he entered the security code and deactivated the alarm. They sat in the study. They talked for a few minutes. Because he was a familiar face, Julianna felt no danger. She sat in her chair and opened her book. It was in that moment of total trust that Henderson acted. He didn't use a weapon. He didn't leave a mess. He simply waited for the right moment and ended her life in the place where she felt most secure. But Henderson couldn't have done this so easily without the second contradiction. The unexpected accessory. This wasn't a person who helped him plan the murder. It was the neighborhood's private security guard, a man named Elias. Elias was a creature of habit. Every night at 7:30 p.m., he drove his patrol car to the end of the cul-de-sac, parked, and took a 15-minute break to eat his dinner. Everyone in the neighborhood knew this. It was a routine so steady you could set your watch by it. Henderson had watched Elias for years. He knew exactly when the security guard would be looking at his phone instead of the street. On the night of the murder, Henderson waited for Elias to park his car. He knew he had 15 minutes of blind time. He walked across his lawn, entered Julianna's house, committed the crime, and walked back to his own porch just as Elias was starting his engine to finish his rounds. Elias had seen Henderson standing on his own porch a few minutes later and waved. He didn't think it was strange. He didn't log it. To Elias, Henderson was a part of the landscape. He was safe. By following his own routine so perfectly, the security guard had unintentionally created a hole in the safety of the neighborhood. A hole that Henderson used to escape justice for those first few weeks. The legal resolution took time, but eventually, the truth was too loud to ignore. The boots that Marcus Thorne wore were common, but the dirt found on Henderson's porch matched the unique mineral composition of the soil in Julianna's flower bed. When the police finally searched Henderson's house, they found a notebook. It wasn't a diary of hate. It was a log. He had recorded every time Julianna left her house, every time she came home, and every person who visited her for the last 3 years. The helpful neighbor was actually a silent stalker. Marcus Thorne was released, but the damage to his reputation was already done. He left the state, unable to live in a place that had been so quick to call him a monster. Mr. Henderson was charged and convicted. He didn't show remorse. In his mind, he was protecting the neighborhood from change. He believed that by keeping Julianna there forever, he was maintaining the peace of Oakwood Crest. This case leaves us with a heavy final reflection. We are taught from a young age to watch out for the bad man. We are told to lock our doors against strangers and to be wary of those who show their anger openly. But Julianna Vance did everything right. She locked her doors. She was kind. She stayed out of trouble. Her mistake was not a lack of caution, but a lack of suspicion toward the familiar. The case was solved too quickly because the police wanted the story to be simple. They wanted the villain to be the man who yelled, not the man who waved. They wanted the evidence to fit the person they already disliked. But the truth is often found in the quiet corners, in the people who help us too much, and in the routines that make us feel safe until they are used against us. When we move too fast to find justice, we often leave the real danger behind. Thank you for spending time with us today as we looked into the quiet tragedy of Oakwood Crest. Stories like this remind us that the people we think we know best can sometimes be the ones we understand the least. If you appreciate this style of respectful, calm storytelling, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue to bring these cases to light. What do you think is the most important red flag people often miss in their own neighborhoods? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We will see you in the next case.